today. As David Stearns says the rosters for the Mets were set for 2025, they make one more addition. Drew Smith is heading back to the team, and that's something I couldn't see coming. Plus, Polar Bear makes it official. All the social media accounts have gone nuts. We're talking about that on this edition of Mets Digest. What's going on, everybody? Flobo Boyce with you, hanging with you on a very dreary day out here in Los Angeles, California, where I'm based. But you know it's always going to be hot in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Before we get into today's news and notes and topics, just want to say myself alongside Mike D'Angelo work tirelessly to give you the news and notes you need. So do us a favor, like the video, comment on the video, and subscribe to the channel. You don't want to be in that not subscribed crew. You want to be in that subscribe crew. That 23.4% are the real homies. Like I said in the teaser, Pete Alonso is now officially part of the Mets squad. And even though it should have been pretty much common knowledge by now, it has been made official on those official Mets accounts. Remember, spring training was announced. The rosters were announced a couple days ago. But the idea is that we now have it is in writing, 2-year deal for the Polar Bear. First year worth $20 million, second year worth $24 million with a $10 million signing bonus. It was pending a physical. This is why he wasn't listed on anything before that. But you know, all the things are out there. In fact, the team has released a little bit of a Polar Bear retrospective, childhood hero, long-term fan of the team situation video package. I do recommend you checking it out, even though at 2 years in a deal, it seems kind of cheap. I'm not saying it wasn't the right move for the team, but personally, those kind of things, when you say Pete Alonso's here to stay, that's like a 6 or 7 or 8 year deal. But that's just me. Pete Alonso's back officially. We can now get things going. Now, there's a lot of news and notes happening over there in Port St. Lucie for the spring training. Clay Holmes is getting that work in. We see a little bit of Francisco Alvarez talking to some of the press. Kodai Senga has proof he's a comedian. And of course, David Stearns said he's going to move away from Jose Iglesias, what we all pretty much suspected. I'm sure more and more news will unfold with that in the next coming days. But the big thing for me today was the addition of Drew Smith to the squad. Here is somebody who not necessarily I thought was done with the team, but when he went down with injury, I thought the Mets were looking to move on. The Mets have put on a lot of new hands and new faces in that bullpen and that pitching staff, and I kind of thought that Drew Smith got lost in the shuffle. But this was interesting for me. It was announced today. Got to give props to everyone who reported on this one, SNY TV, The Athletic et al. But I want to let you know what you think about this. Says that the Mets re-signing reliever Drew Smith, manager Carlos Mendoza confirmed to reporters on Wednesday afternoon, adding that it means a lot to the guys in the locker room, quote unquote, that Smith is back. Smith will earn $1 million in 2025, while the option for 2026 is worth $2 million per John Heyman of the New York Post, who reports that the contract also includes incentives. And this is why this is interesting. To me, it could be a very sneaky signing. Drew Smith has pitched in high leverage situations. The Mets want to be a high leverage team. And even though my heart was in my throat when he pitched a couple games today, was able to more or less deliver. Sometimes he blew up. We all saw that. But other times able to be pretty adept at his job. But he is injured. And so he went down with the UCL tear. He had what was called a hybrid Tommy John surgery, which is coming all the rage these days. That's when they get basically do the UCL reconstruction and then put an internal brace inside the elbow, hopefully that it will be more stable, but also puts you out on a shelf for a longer period of time. What I'm getting at, that it's a very good possibility that Smith doesn't even take the mound in 2025. This is why it makes this pickup just a bit more interesting, because you talk about short-term deals, we talked about investing in youth, we talk about seeing what the next man up is going to be with the team, and yet one of the pieces that I kind of forgot about in 2024 Mets story is getting a chance with the Mets once more. Anthony DeComo, MLB.com, goes into more detail. He says, return to New York allows Smith to retain his title as the longest tenured Mets pitcher. That's a fun fact for you. I had no idea. And the second longest tenured Met overall after outfielder Brandon Nimmo. Wow, am I that old where Brandon Nimmo is the oldest tenured Met? I feel like a grandpa. Coming to the Mets in 2017 trade from the Rays for Lucas Duda, one of my dad's favorite players back in the day. Smith debuted the following season before undergoing his first Tommy John operation in 2018. Following a brief return during the pandemic-shortened 2020 season, Smith became a cog in the Mets bullpen from 21 to 24, ranking third in appearances behind Adam Ottavino and Edwin Diaz. And that is something interesting, that last line. Behind Adam Ottavino and Edwin Diaz, when both men were faltering in the beginning top half of that season, especially when the whole staff was pretty much going through it, Drew Smith was really the first person they tried to swap people out for. He was like the setup man sometimes. He was the closer sometimes. He was the guy getting the saves. He was the guy getting the winning pitcher record, depending on the game it was. He was pretty much used anywhere from inning 6 to inning 9, especially when Edwin Diaz was going through his problems and Adam Ottavino basically got caught out with the whole pitch clock thing. Mind you, sometimes the pitch clock is a good thing. Most times, often not. Ottavino hasn't been the same since that whole pitch clock thing happened. Trust me, you didn't click this video for Adam Ottavino shade. I'm just putting it out there. Again, here is somebody who's very capable, but the team had a lot of capable people who are not in this squad anymore. Harrison Bader, for example, Jose Quintana still not signed, so I figured that Drew Smith probably wouldn't have been signed again. But this is a show of faith. $1 million for more or less a lost season with an option for one more says maybe there's something in the mix for what they plan to do, the pitching staff, over the 2026 season and beyond. AM New York puts a final cap on this one. It says Drew Smith is currently recovering from his Tommy John surgery, which he underwent on July 13th. So there is some months have already gone since he had that surgery, so he's already in the path to recovery. It is too early to tell the 31-year-old will make it back to pitch at all in 2025. My sources say likely, not likely, and by sources I mean the article that I showed you earlier before. But if this rehab goes well, he will certainly be a lock to have his option picked up next year and be ready for opening day 2026. This was the second Tommy John surgery of his career. Now, having a Tommy John surgery used to be a career ender, but now more and more pitchers are having 1 or 2. We haven't seen many 3 and 4 time recipients, but that to me is just I'm not saying it's a good thing about our durability of our pitchers or the betterment of our medical technology, but to have a second Tommy John and still be ready to play Major League Baseball is just bananas. The other wiped away his entire 2019 season. So, what say you? There's a lot of questions I have when it comes to this. 1, can Drew Smith deliver? Obviously, that's the guy with the contract, right? If you have a chance to come back healthy in 2026, will you still have it? But more importantly, again, we try to put down what David Stearns' legacy is going to be, right? We're talking about what kind of plays he went after, what kind of moves he made. There's some big splashes. Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, you could argue those are more Steve Cohen's doing, right? But a lot of the moves that Dave Stearns is directly responsible for tend to be these small, more modest moves. But no matter how modest you looked at it, there was enough arms already in play between last season with the deadline acquisitions of, like, say, Blackburn and Horacio Bronzabon and others to say, hey, look, we can try basically a new combination. To go back to Drew Smith was kind of an interesting thing. They're seeing something that I don't. And so I want to ask you that. Is there something that maybe I'm missing when it comes to that? I want to give you the stats before we close this out here today. So the ERA wasn't necessarily bad or great, kind of middle of the road, even though it really was more like a roller coaster ride day to day if you're watching the game day to day. But the numbers look pretty solid. Again, win-loss record 50%, batting 500, or should say not batting, but a 500 win-loss record percentage over 19 games. Again, pretty much middle of the road. And maybe middle of the road is what you need to be good in the situation for the leverages in the situation the team wants to put you in. But again, so many questions I have about being able to get that contract picked up. But then again, it's only $1 million now, $2 million next year. Maybe I'm just thinking too much about the impact on the team and not how savvy, thrifty the new management front office is looking. I'll take a look at that FIP, 3.56, pretty good for someone of his age and caliber. Yes, that said, it's still spring training. It's still early in 2025 season, and I am really excited. I know on paper we want one more signing. I know on paper we wanted to get the Pete Alonso thing done early. We wanted Juan Soto for cheaper. We wanted this guy. We wanted that guy. But I've never been so hyped for this season going in based on the moves we made, roster for roster, in a long, long time. Definitely looks like a playoff team on paper. Most places have us projected as third in the NL East. I'm going to go on a limb and say second behind the Braves, unfortunately. The Phillies are just too old and too stiff for my liking. But think about this. This could really be the start of, I won't say a dynasty, I don't want to jinx it, but the start of having a team that's competitive year after year after year. And I've been on this planet for a couple decades, and I've seen this team go from being really good to having years of mediocrity and spiking good again. But small moves that are savvy could be on the pace to make us someone who's there every single season, a threat every single season. That is it for me on this edition of Mets Digest. I'm just rocking, man, having the time of my life. Can't wait for spring training games to start between Cactus League, between Grapefruit League. We're going to have ourselves a ball. If you're going out there, let me know. I may decide to pick up the car and head over to Florida or fly in there for a couple days myself. That is it for me. I'll be back soon with some more news and updates for the New York Metropolitans. As always, it's LGM to the bitter end.